Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Welcome to episode 115 of the Highly Relevant Podcast, a U.S. Latino show where I interview the people and discuss the moments that are shaping our American and Latino pop culture. This week on the show, I discuss the 2019 Upfronts with Michael Malone from Broadcasting Cable Magazine, and I review the third installment of the John Wick series with film and culture critic Mike Sargent. But before I begin with Michael Malone and the Upfronts, it's time to give you our weekly pop culture news recap in a segment I like to call Jacked In. Let's begin with the top movie news of the week. Venezuelan actor Edgar Ramirez joined Sebastian Stan in the spy thriller 355. Chris Rock teams with Lionsgate to relaunch the horror classic Saw franchise. Netflix, Will Smith and Queen Latifah team up on a hip-hop musical film. Halloween director John Carpenter wants to direct again, and Bill Murray says he's willing to appear in Jason Reitman's Ghostbusters 3. In TV news, Eugenio Derbez joins the voice cast of Nickelodeon's The Casagrandes. Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones, documentary RBG lead the MTV Movie and TV Awards nominations. Black Mirror returns with its much-anticipated 5th season on Wednesday, June 5th, exclusively on Netflix. CW is open to another Jane the Virgin spinoff. Fox will end Empire after season 6. Billy Bush returns to TV to anchor the new version of Extra this fall, while Mario Lopez will be headed to Access Hollywood. And NBC's and Telemundo's Consumer 101 has been picked up for season 2. Switching over to music, Pitbull performed at Telemundo's after-party Upfront. Demi Lovato hires Justin Bieber's manager Scooter Braun. Woodstock 50th Anniversary Festival is happening. Daddy Yankee joins Univision's Reina de la Canción as executive producer. Rolling Stones announced the rescheduled No Filter tour, and Maluma was a guest on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And in tech and social media news, Spotify is using its new Anchor podcast app to beat Apple. Google is launching YouTube on the Oculus Quest. Sprint's first 5G phone will ship on May 31st. People are using Snapchat for Instagram and Twitter content. And Bernie Sanders becomes the latest 2020 candidate to call for a Facebook breakup. New York is once again the meeting ground for the Upfronts, an annual event between television networks and advertisers where the networks put on a song and pony show for advertisers to spend money on their new slate of programming. Here to help me discuss the 2019 TV Upfronts is Michael Malone from Broadcasting Cable Magazine. Michael, what's going on, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
Happy to be here. Happy to not be at an Upfront meeting right now, to be honest with you.
Hey, I always thought that going to the Upfronts was kind of cool, but, from the people that actually go there every single year, I've heard for years that the Upfronts can become a drag. Is that true?
I shouldn't knock them because they are important and they are entertaining. It's just an awful lot in 1 week. When you get to this point of the week, you're just looking forward to the weekend. It's grueling. It's very, very tiring, but it ends eventually, and then the industry's kind of quiet for a bit. So I'm happy to cover them.
How long have you been covering Upfronts, Michael?
Oh boy, probably 5-6 years now.
And how has the Upfronts changed over those last 5-6 years?
I feel like a lot of the meetings have gotten longer. Not so much with the Spanish language networks, but if you look at Disney acquiring some key Fox assets. You look at NBC, Universal getting bigger and bigger. They kind of want to fit everybody in. And what used to be an hour and a half about a broadcast network now might be 2 hours or even more about.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Let's begin with Telemundo and the Univision Upfront. I know you had a chance to see it. You did some scoops on it. You wrote something on it for Broadcasting Cable Magazine. What were your key takeaways from what was presented?
Well, for Univision, they talked about relaunching their Unimas network and really having Unimas focused on live stuff.
That's an interesting take, huh?
It is. It is. Broadcast is more and more about live events because that's what it can offer that maybe the streaming guys don't do quite as well. So they're doubling down in a lot of ways. And Unamas debuted a 10 p.m. newscast just on Monday this week. And what else? Univision has a matchmaking reality show that will be on 2 hours a night. That starts in the fall. That's called uh, Enamorandos. I believe that's a Unimas one, but all
Right.
part of Univision
So this is like a
Communication.
Love Island, like a Bachelorette type of show?
That's kind of what it looks like. Yeah, they were quick to not kind of lump it in with reality shows that we know that are of that ilk. But they said it was about finding your lifelong match, and they're going to help.
What did you see that you liked in particular that caught your attention?
One thing that caught my eye, a new series called El Dragon. It comes from Arturo Perez Reverte.
Oh, that's the guy who did La Reina del Sur.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a series for Univision, and obviously he produced La Reina for Telemundo, and he's got a gigantic hit with that. But a new series from him, and as we know, dragons are playing pretty well on TV these days. So very curious to see how that comes together.
I've always found it interesting after Vince Sandusky, the CEO, came in, that he really took the network to almost back to the 80s, back to the 90s, where it was just a Spanish language network, and everything, the progress that was doing, the US Latino-ness that was approaching the network, that they were going to be the home for all Hispanics, English speaking or just Spanish speaking. And that was going to be like the main hub. And they've kind of just knocked that down, said, look, we're not US Latino programmers. We've understood that. We're going to go back to what we do, the Spanish language one. And now Unimas, with the live sort of programming that they want to do, can be now a direct competitor to their own Univision network. How does that even work?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. It's a wonderful luxury to have that second network, such as Unimas, where you can target it a little bit differently than the main one. But yeah, in terms of the main one, the idea is broadcast TV is big and broad and appeals to, if not everybody, at least most of them in some ways, and it's a pretty unique strategy in this day and age, as you said, with so much fragmentation going on, to really kind of play big and try to get everybody under the tent.
Then there's Telemundo, which I have always thought that since its inception has always been the more progressive, the more bold, the more audacious sort of network. What did you see from them, and was there anything that caught your eye?
Um, yeah, they are doing their version of The Wall. The Wall is a primetime game show on NBC, so they're going to give that a shot. Also doing a spin-off of, and please pardon my pronunciation, I'm not a Spanish speaker,
No
unfortunately.
problems.
Not yet, anyway. But they're doing a spinoff of Sinos Hey Paraiso, called El Final del Paraiso. Again, total apologies for the
Yeah,
pronunciation.
this is the third chapter of the Cincenos franchise.
Okay. So a well-regarded franchise there, and we'll see how the spinoff does for that one.
There was one called Operación something, and what I liked about that one in particular was that it was a military show almost, but instead of
Okay.
having a man front it on a military level, it was a woman. And this one in particular I thought was really interesting because we've never seen military women in TV shows. Do you think that something like that works overall, whether it's in English or Spanish?
I think it could. It's a point that Univision did talk about. Jessica Rodriguez, president of entertainment, talked about, quote, celebrating the everyday woman, and kind of easing away from the traditional novellas. So that they are very much focused on kind of showing a different side of women today.
Broadcast seems to be on its last legs. I know we're in transition, Michael, but
Yeah.
so far, who do you think is winning the race right now? Broadcast, cable, or streaming?
Streaming clearly has the buzz. Broadcast, it's just hard to discuss a broadcast show with anybody under 40, I'd say.
It's like talking about Walkmans, right? As opposed
Yeah,
to
yeah. Although my children did watch Survivor, the finale of Survivor last night, but it's not targeted toward that audience. But broadcast still gets big audiences together all at the same time, which the streamers just can't boast of. This notion of day and date scheduling is not necessarily super user friendly, but for those that kind of grew up on it can make for event viewing. It can make for people huddled around the water cooler or the copier the next day chatting about the episode the night before. So broadcast still has that unique proposition to advertisers and to its audience as well.
after this upfront, do you think that there's going to be too many streaming services? And do you think it's going to work? For me, it seems like it's going to become the same problem that cable was. It's just too many channels and you're paying way too much money for channels you don't even watch. Do you think that this template of the way Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, you think that's going to ultimately be the way we watch TV, or we're going to have some sort of hybrid of everything?
You have to believe that we will just be clicking on our apps down the road. When that happens, I don't know. But I did see this week when the big networks were doing their presentations, there was a lot of talk about upcoming streaming platforms, and CBS already has theirs out and done. But Warner Media was talking about one for TBS and TNT and their networks, and NBC's got one coming. So you do wonder, and some of them will be free, some will not be free, but you wonder how many we will choose to click on and watch down the road. We'll see.
There's a lot of media companies, and I noticed that NBC did this a few years ago. They sort of kind of introduced the concept where they've been consolidating their upfront events into like one single event with all of their networks. Each network used to have their own upfront. Now they're just putting it all together in one single experience, which can make it a little longer, and times from those specific networks might be dwindled down to maybe even a few minutes, which then brings me to the following point. Do you think that upfronts are becoming obsolete because they don't seem like they're necessarily a must thing to do? Do the CMOs even go? Is it a waste of time and resources while people are getting laid off?
It's an interesting point. I don't think they're obsolete. I think they still have a key role in the ecosystem of the television business, and these theaters were full this week. You really could not find an open seat. So, are they what they used to be? No, clearly not. Are TV broadcast ratings what they used to be? Clearly not. They're falling every day, but it's still an elemental part of the business cycle for television. And I did do a story on that recently and spoke with the CEO of Promax, a TV marketing association, a guy named Steve Kazanjian, and he said the upfronts are still critical to creating buzz, buzz for your network, buzz for your new show. It's still a giant audience of influencers, and you got their attention. It's on you to make a good sell to them.
What do you think is the future of the upfronts?
Is interesting. Will they be around forever? No, probably not. But I just don't see a day when they disappear, because for that to happen, it's got to be one network that says, "Hey, we're not doing them this year," and they'll have to come up with another strategy. And I just don't know that any network is really in a position to take a big swing like that, and without knowing what the downside is. So networks tend to kind of do what everybody else is doing, and if they're all doing their upfront presentation, then you'd probably be remiss to not be part of that.
It's interesting that you say all this, because back in 2008, around the recession, maybe 2010, Jeff Zucker, while he was the chairman of NBC, said that he was going to be the first one to not do an upfront that year.
Yeah.
And I think that other networks sort of followed. And what they did, instead of having the big bash, is that they decided to go on tour. So instead of having the advertisers come to them, they were individually going to go to each advertiser and kind of do the pony and dance show for all of them. That didn't seem to work. So eliminating it altogether doesn't seem to work. And maybe there's going to be a tweaking of this upfront, kind of like you said. So far, you've been going to most of the upfronts. Who are the winners and the losers? Who are the ones that you think did it right, and who are the ones that sort of, didn't match or exceed expectations?
Good question. I thought, even though it was big and long, I thought NBC Universal did a pretty good job of fitting so many networks into a show that ran for, not sure the exact time, but under 2 hours, I think. And Radio City is a great setting, and they were able to get an awful lot in. And again, it wasn't short, but it could have been a lot longer. So I thought that was successful. I felt Disney's was just too long, and it's their first year of having FX and having Nat Geo, these assets they got in the deal with Fox. So they would probably be wise, in my opinion, to maybe shrink that down a little bit next year. And I liked what Univision did, where it was 3 separate events, not giant events, but 3 separate ones at a not a grand theater, but a Center 415 in Manhattan, where it was a presentation from the CEO, from the ad sales chief, entertainment chief, and the sports guy. And then after that, it was on to these, what they call experiential booths, where you could check out what's going on in sports, what's going on in news, whatever else is within the Univision world, and just kind of have a drink, have something to eat, and kind of take it in at your own speed. That seemed like that might be a model for the future.
Telemundo doesn't do an upfront anymore. They do a press conference, which I had a chance to see as well. But do you think that not having a physical, single upfront event for Telemundo is hurting them in their competition with Univision?
Hard to say. Telemundo did have a presence in the NBCU presentation, and it wasn't a long one, but it was Luis Fonsi, it was Kate Del Castillo from La Reina. So that they were, they did turn up there, and then they did have an event with Pitbull at Hammerstein Ballroom Monday evening. So it wasn't a sales pitch, but they were able to at least get their clients together and feed them and pour them a drink and let them groove a bit to Pitbull. So they were well represented this week, I thought.
So, Michael, out of all the programming that was kind of thrown at you in this last week so far, was there a particular show that you went, okay, I need to see that show. I need to hunker down and just binge on that show?
I did think that El Dragon series looked interesting. CBS looked like it had some funny comedies, a new one with Patricia Heaton going to medical school and becoming a doctor after a career of teaching. That looked like that.
Okay, that looks like fun. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it had a bit of promise to it. So yeah, we'll see how that shakes out.
It's kind of fun to almost have a front row seat to how the media is transitioning from what it used to be to what it is now, isn't it?
It definitely is. Yeah, and the thing about television, everybody I know watches it. Everybody I know talks about it. So it is fun to see these shows when they're just seeds being planted in the ground, and to watch them grow or not grow, as is often the case. So it's fun to watch.
Michael Malone from Broadcasting Cable Magazine, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And if you want to catch up on what's going on with the Upfronts this year, go read Michael's articles on Broadcasting Cable Magazine. Thanks a lot again, Michael.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
And before Mike Sargent and I explain why John Wick 3 is a moviegoer's dream action film, here are 3 Latin tracks you might want to add to your playlist this weekend. So Good, Omar Apollo. Quiero Volver, Francisco Victoria.
Tuyo es este recuerdo, la ilusión que quisiste crear.
Recuerdo, Urdaneta y Soy Emilio.
En la tierra, cuando ya no queda más.
Are services still off limits to me?
What do you need?
Guns. Lots of guns.
This week, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum comes out in theaters, and Mike Sargent, film and culture critic, is here with me now to discuss it and sort of deconstruct this movie. If it's good, if it's bad, is it better than the others? Mike, what's going on, man?
I'm here. I've got to tell you, I'm really, because we haven't spoken about this at all. I'm really interested to hear what you think of this movie. Before I tell you anything, you got to tell me what you think.
So let's set up everybody who has been waiting for John Wick 3. They have questions about it. Maybe there's people that haven't seen the franchise series yet. So let me kind of set it up for you. This is the third installment of the John Wick series, and it's directed by Chad Stahelski, who has done some movies with Keanu in terms of the choreography of the movements and things like that. It was written by creator Derek Kolstad. He was a screenwriter that had this idea called Scorn. It went to Keanu Reeves. He looked at it and decided to change the name from Scorn to John Wick. And it stars Keanu Reeves, Halle Berry, Lawrence Fishburne, Asia Kate Dillon. She's the actress from Billions. She plays Taylor Mason. Angelica Houston and Ian McShane, which is one of my favorite actors right now, either in television or film. So I'll let you know right off the bat, Mike, I thought this was just as good as the last two. I thoroughly enjoyed this, but you and I are going to talk. I want to hear what you have to say about the film, and then I'll let you know my thoughts of why I liked it in particular.
Oh, man, I wanted to know what you thought first. Okay. All right. So, I'll say this. A couple things just to add to what you were saying before. I mean, first of all, the original John Wick was Stahelski's first directorial gig. He had only been like a stunt choreographer, So that was his first film. And he did that with David Leitch, who went on to do Deadpool 2. So I just want to say that. And one of the thing is, you mentioned here, one of the key and signature key things that they did in this film that's original is put action and gunplay together.
Right.
And it had never been like it is in these movies. So in that sense, I think that the action is definitely, if you like gunplay and fighting together, this is Nirvana.
And to interject, because I think what you said is so crucial to why this movie is liked by so many people. The training sessions, most of the money that goes into John Wick doesn't even go into CGI. This is a movie that doesn't have much CGI. And I think that's what people are really sort of attracted to it, that much of this trilogy's budget is spent on the training for these scenes.
Right.
And it comes out so well that you're like, oh, it's like a throwback to another era of cinema and filmmaking that I think people really, truly appreciate.
It's a good point you made there, because the thing about Keanu, and it is a bit of a stretch here, but he's so laconic and laid back
right.
that he reminds you of like a young Clint Eastwood, where it's so just, I casually will kick your ass if you push me. You know what I mean? And
I'm going to casually kick your ass.
Exactly. Clint would be like, I'm going to have to kick your ass. Whereas, Keanu's more like, I'm gonna have to kick your ass. So, and they're both gonna whisper it. You know what I mean?
Right. Very few words here by Keanu.
Exactly, very few. That's what I mean. Also, he has very little dialogue. A la, like you said, even Stallone's best films, he had very little dialogue. First Blood, he didn't say anything. So I think from that standpoint, it is a throwback to that kind of action where the story moves along. There's a lot of scenes in the movie where, without giving it away, he meets a character and the character's like, what do you want? And he just shows him something and the character understands and we have to understand. And again, there's no dialogue. Am I right?
There's barely any dialogue. And what I like about John Wick 3 is that this is the expansion of this underworld mythology that is the background, the setting for John Wick's killings, It shows New York in a very sort of neo-noir setting, dark, gothic to a certain extent. It reminds me of like Underworld, but in New York City. The action is creative, it's innovative, and the act and the violence is just it's blood and guts to the point where it almost becomes the thing you go to see this film for.
Well, now here's the thing, okay? I think it absolutely is the thing you go to see this film for. It's modern day action has clearly evolved. Choreography is everything. That's what make karate films. Anybody that likes martial arts films, it's the choreography
you're
that
right.
loves. Jackie Chan, all of that. But at the same time, I do have to say this. I enjoyed it, and you brought up an interesting point because there's going to be a TV series this fall called The Continental, and it's about all these assassins and things that go on at the Continental. Which
it's a great idea, by the way.
It is a great idea, and the whole idea, just for those who may or may not have seen the film, like you said, The Continental it is a centerpiece of all these films because it's a place where assassins go and they can't do their business there. And the whole premise of this film is that in the last John Wick, he did do his business there, and now he's excommunicated.
Right.
So this is all about him. Everybody trying to get him, and he's trying to get out or get some help, as it were. My only problem with this film was there was a point in the film where, and again, they had to bring in, new characters and a different locale to kind of keep it interesting. But, now I'm a filmmaker and a film critic. And so I've studied story structure, and I've all the greats, I've taken the classes or work with them. And John Truby is one of these story structure guys for movies, screenplays. A lot of guys come out of there. He says something that's very key to remember when you're making an action film. He says that action can be the death of plot, because until that fight is resolved, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
So the story stands still a lot of times. And then you're setting up, okay, there's going to be another big fight. Everybody get your guns, more fighting. And there's a point where I will say I enjoyed the fighting, but it was almost too much fighting.
So I'm gonna tell you this, because I think.
Now, am I making any sense to you?
You're making so much sense that I'm about to throw this one down on you.
All right, I'm ready.
You and I, we're fans, we're moviegoers ourselves, but we're also critics. And
Yes.
what we're supposed to do is kind of have these conversations that maybe a regular person that is just a moviegoer and is not a frequent moviegoer, goes maybe 3 times a year, doesn't critique films in any way. That person probably has a whole different perspective on the viewing of this film. Now, let me explain. I wrote on Twitter the other day that I don't know if I can ever watch another movie with critics again. There's barely any emotional
enthusiasm.
It
I
lacks.
know what you're talking about. I agree with you.
And you had
1,000%.
said this too, where
Yes, definitely.
I think it's time that critics might maybe kind of sneak in and start watching these movies with regular moviegoers. Everything you told me in terms of plot, not, lacking in this film compared to maybe the other ones, et cetera, and that the action is really sort of almost overwhelming in this film. Everybody in there was gasping, oohing, eyeing, clapping, applauding.
Oh, because you went with a promo audience.
I went to a promo screening. So there's press screenings. For those of you who don't know how the screenings work, critics are invited to press screenings. So when you go to these screenings, it's mostly other press people who are jaded, who watch 5 movies a week. So
Right, they sit there with their arms folded.
Exactly. Just like, let this end so I can go home. For the promo screenings, which are promotional screenings for regular people to kind of just then see the movie and then tell their friends all about it, they call it.
But
more,
wait, not just regular people. Let me add to that to say the target audience.
Or the target audience. And in this particular case, I went to a Hispanic one, a Latino promo screening.
Oh man, I should have been there.
Bro, it was so much fun because every joke, every punchline, every one-liner, it was a collective laughter. It was a collective gasp. It was once again, this is why you have to go see movies, at least film critics, cannot see these movies with other film critics. They got to see it with the real people.
All right, well, you know, did you?
And they didn't pay attention to the plot. They almost didn't care about it, Mike.
They didn't care.
So then what does this mean for critics?
You know what? You're making such a good point that I'm going to throw this at you, okay? I agree with you 1,015% about seeing with the intended audience and that thrill. I mean, it's sort of like the difference between listening to music on your iPod and going to a live concert. There's no comparison,
right.
you know? But I went to a tiny, tiny screening room. There were like 4 or 5 other people there with me, maybe 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and it was a 20-seat screening room. It was digital arts. So I got the other end of the spectrum where I enjoyed it and a few people chuckled, but I didn't get any of that. Like that's a thrill ride. And my most memorable movie experiences
were always with
they're never with critics.
They're never with critics. It sucks, man, that we have that bad rap, but I'm starting to become more aware of it because I'm going to more promo screenings because the press screenings sometimes I just can't make. So I ask the publicist of the studios, and I ask him, hey, is there another screening? They're like, well, I can squeeze you into the promo screening. And when I go to that, holy moly, dude, even The Curse of La Llorona, I did a fan reaction review for that film about maybe 3 episodes ago for Curse of La Llorona. And basically I said, look, don't listen to me. Right. Listen to the fan reaction, which is the pure way of knowing whether a film works or doesn't. This is how movie studios do focus groups. The first, I mean, can you explain a little bit about the focus groups? Because that's a whole other type of screening.
Sure. The whole concept behind a focus group is this. You know, you show the movie to, again, that target audience, the people who you want to market to, and then you give them a series of questions about the movie.
But it's like the first draft or the first edit,
it's like
right?
The first edit of the movie. They want to know what works, what doesn't work. They ask you to fill in questions. You know, what did you like this character? Did you like that character? What did you know, there may be issues that they are concerned. How did you feel about this? And from that goes then to the director and the editor, and then and often the producer, and then choices are made. Because at a certain point, if you spend a lot of money on a movie, you have to satisfy that audience. And as a matter of fact, when you read, if you're a film file and you read reshoots, a lot of times those reshoots came because of things that happened in the test screenings, where something they thought was clear is not clear, and they got to put in a scene where the character goes, you know what, the reason the dead are walking, and, you know, because it wasn't clear. So, so yes, those are focus groups.
So I don't know, man. I can tell you that the movie maybe did lack plot. But I don't think it mattered.
You know what? I'll defer to your review. I'll defer to your review to say that I guarantee you had a better time than I did.
I had an incredible time watching John Wick. And when I got out of that theater, I said to myself, you know what? This has got to be one of the greatest action trilogies of the decade. There's just no buts about it. Every single film, 1, 2, and 3 are intriguing as hell. And we should actually just kind of break down why you think people seem to love John Wick so much.
I could tell you all the reasons why I think this, but you want to start or you want me to?
No, go for it.
All right. Well, I think a couple of things, and I think John Wick kind of came at the right time. And what has happened here with storytelling, with movies, television, adaptations, is that people they found that the more you advance and expand the universe, people are more willing to, if you like the characters and now you understand the universe, people will buy it and they're in for the ride. So you can have a story. This movie, I don't even think they could have made a movie that ends as not abruptly, but they literally guess what? There's going to be another at the end of this movie. And it would be a lot less satisfying if we weren't used to, stories that end, but it's not really over. So I think that's one. 2, I think that the action, it's so much fun. You when you find out in the original John Wick why he was kicking so much ass.
It was
How can you
because
not
of his
love a guy?
puppy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, going back to screenwriting, one thing they always tell you about a character, if you want an audience to love a character, no matter how obnoxious you may want to make that character, to be original, you've got to have, and this is a cliche, but they call it, you got to have a scene where he pets the puppy. And petting the puppy is just like with a character shows that there's a side of him that is soft. So here you've got this assassin who can take on 50 men, but you know what? Don't fuck with his dog. How can you not love that character?
Oh, by the way, and that whole notion gets a wink in this third part.
Oh, absolutely.
With the Halle Berry character.
With the Halle Berry, with one line.
One line, which, by the
Right,
way,
and-
had the whole room in stitches.
Yeah.
It fell so well, that joke, that everybody, it was almost like you couldn't hear yourself for like 5-10 seconds.
Right,
That's how
of
loud the
course.
laughter was.
Well, now you see, that brings in something else where when you understand the universe, and this is one of the things that Marvel's done, you understand the universe, you've seen the other movies, you get the context. Now we can have jokes within jokes. We can have in jokes. Everybody's in on the joke. So you're all kind of digging.
It feels special. It feels communal. It feels like
you feel, and here's the thing, you
the
feel
Insiders
like you're part of
Club.
it. Yeah, you feel like you're a part of it. And I think that's the key. And I think that the last thing with Keanu is, I mean, again, what you mentioned before, the idea of the laid back, super cool, like what, who doesn't want to be someone? I used to have this joke, right, about like how cool Clint Eastwood is. Okay. And I'll do it. I'll do you my Clint Eastwood impression. I'll do the joke.
Okay.
I'm going to do the joke for you. And you've got it now. As soon as I stop talking, you got to say, as soon as you hear me make a sound, you got to say, Clint, what's wrong?
Okay. Clint, what's wrong?
Heart attack. So he's so cool. He's so cool.
Dude, that just sounded extra cool because of the way you said it.
That's it. He's so cool. Like he just grunts when he has a heart attack. So I'm just saying that to say that that's the other, I think, appeal about John Wick is because all kinds of stuff happens. He just remains the same. He gets a little scarred, a little beat up, and he's like, I'm going to still kick your ass. So,
right.
And so I think that's my, what's your take?
I think that world building is the hottest thing in movies right now, and even in television,
Absolutely.
And they've really honed it and polished it in part 3 here on this film. You don't feel it. It's not the center of the film, but the tone of the film and knowing that it has this really cool, sexy, stylish, very sophisticated, fashionable type of setting makes whatever is happening in terms of the story being driven by these characters, it just makes it all that much better. For me, there's 3 key things, and I think it begins with Keanu. This is the perfect marriage between story and actor, where the story plays to all the strengths of Keanu and none of his weaknesses. So it's almost like a bespoke, custom-made suit, perfect for Keanu Reeves. He has the stunt choreographer that worked with him in Matrix as the director and helping him with the stunts here as well. They take months to do this, and I think it shows, which is the reason that we appreciate it. Number one, Keanu is 54 years old, man. Tom Cruise, just to kind of give you some perspective, is 56. So anybody in their mid-50s can still pull off some great movies. I thought maybe Keanu Reeves in this particular film was a little slower than in the past 2. Some people who have seen the last 2 might pick up on that, but nevertheless, there was 2 long sequences, man, of just hand-to-hand combat that took a little too long. It was great, though, because you can see how much effort went into Keanu kind of perfecting these stunts. But I think it's his demeanor. He's a man of few words. He's a sympathetic killer, which is hilarious. He's a dog-loving killer, which is even more funny. And they tease a lot of that Matrix reunion. So I like Keanu in this role better than probably anybody else. The violence, obviously, is the center force for the appeal of the film. The action sequences are extremely creative. They really go above and beyond in this particular film. And I think that the underworld mythology, the setting, really, really comes to life in this particular case, because the end of the movie takes place in the Continental Hotel, and it really goes all out to kind of just tell you how they've almost perfected the John Wick story.
Well, I think everything you said is completely true, and you made me realize that there's another component. And I think that is, bad guys are always more fun than good guys. and the bottom line is this is a series of films about a stone cold killer. He kills people for money. He may have retired and fallen in love at the beginning of the first film, but he kills people for money. And this is what he did. He's to some extent amoral. And now, of course, we all get his motivation. They're trying to kill him. He's self-defense. But, I think that's part of the appeal. Like the whole idea of somebody that's doing something you could never do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the appeal of this character. And I think, like you said, I think you're right. I think Keanu Reeves has got a lock on this ever since The Matrix. He's that guy. I think even in Speed.
But you know what? Keanu is also the guy that gets in the subway.
I know. I've seen those photos. Yeah.
He's the guy that takes the train here in New York City and doesn't care if people go up to him or not. Usually New Yorkers don't. But usually New Yorkers aren't looking for the celebrity on the train, in the subway system. So he's that guy. And I never really thought that he wanted to get back into the blockbuster game and invest so much of himself at this age. Usually people in their 50s that once they've had a career, they kind of just live off of the blockbuster money that they get from these great films like The Matrix, et cetera, et cetera. But for him at this age, at 54, to be investing 3-4 months to just train for these films has to really take a lot out of him. And I thought he was trying to get away from the commercial films. I thought he was trying to get away from the blockbuster films, the franchises, the sequels, but he's all in on that, man.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, because I think a couple things. I think that says a lot about him, like you said. I think he's someone who likes to challenge himself. I think he's interested in it. I'll be honest, I've seen him in a lot of movies where I didn't think he was a very good actor. I've only seen him in a few films where I thought he really could act. I've seen him in films where he was kind of groaningly bad. But I've also seen him when like you said, when this role is perfect for him. It fits him like a glove. But I do think, as opposed to like somebody like a Russell Crowe who just kind of lets himself go and I'll just play middle-aged characters now. To want to stay in shape into your 50s and 60s, it really does, whether you're Tom Cruise or Liam Neeson or not that Stallone, can't go back and remake everything.
He's doing Rambo 5 now.
That's what I'm saying. So, and he's in his 70s. So, I think there's a lot to be said to people who still want to challenge themselves. Even what's his name, who does Wolverine, said, Hugh Jackman said, the last film it was a lot harder to do these exercises, now than it was 15 years ago.
Absolutely. And it takes a toll on your body, man, for that much. So the fact that Keanu is giving everything, all that sweat equity, let's just put it this way, to make this a franchise that is legitimate and one of the best action franchises in decades, really says a lot about how he views the rest of his career and how he views how he has a really good sense of what the audience wants to see him in, which is a form of that like Matrix hand-to-hand combat in a very cool mythological tech setting, which is kind of what this has in terms of similarities.
Definitely. And I think he's into that too. I think he's into, he's clearly a spiritual dude, and he's into music and he plays that. And I've interviewed him and he's like that. Like, he's like talking. He's like, hey, how you doing? It's like
he's just too fucking cool, man. He is the coolest guy. Him, Robert Downey Jr. are on a league of their own, man.
That's a pair. I want to see them in a movie.
Wow. No, I think they have. No.
What did they do together? What film?
That movie with Richard Linklater, the one with the it was
River
the
Phoenix?
rotoscope film.
Oh right, yes they did. Well, back when Downey, but that's I know the one you're talking about.
And Keanu was the star.
Yes,
Robert Downey was the main maniacal sidekick friend.
Oh, dark something.
Something like that. Yeah. We'll find out, guys. If not, you just let us know and tweet us what the name of that movie was. But Mike Sargent, you can catch him on WBAI, Fox Business News, and the PBS. John Wick 3 comes out this Friday, starring Keanu Reeves. Don't miss it. We love it. And that's it for episode 115 of the Highly Relevant Podcast. I want to thank Michael Malone and Mike Sargent for coming on the show. And if you'd like to support the show, please spread the love on social media and tell all your friends about it. You can reach me on Instagram at Jack Rico and my Facebook page, Jack Rico 40. Remember, it's only through your support that our show can grow. I'm Jack Rico. See you next week on another episode of Highly Relevant.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.